Here's Paul Preston with Agenda 21.
Well, hello and welcome to Agenda 21 Radio. This is the radio show that is stopping totalitarianism, one exceptional American at a time. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, are you that exceptional American? Well, I suspect you are. That's why you're listening to this radio show right here, right now on Agenda 21 Radio. Remember to visit our website, a21r.com, and of course, New California State, State of the Future, and what a future that we have here. Right now, though, we have Simone Anderson with us, and Simone, welcome to Agenda 21 Radio. It's nice to see you. It's probably a little warmer today than it was before.
You better tell my cold feet that. It's pretty cold down here at the park this morning.
Is that right? Okay. Well, I see you're nice and sequestered around cold walls. I'm sure that doesn't help either.
Yes, I have this beautiful background.
Well, let's talk about the birds behind you, though. I hear a lot of birds flying around there or chirping.
It's early morning here. I think last time we had the Canadian geese and they were escaping Trudeau in Canada. So
yeah, that's right.
We're hoping to see some other birds here today.
Yeah. So anyways, Lost in Translations is your show, and welcome aboard again. This is very interesting times that we're living in now, isn't it? We're starting to see a lot more information coming out about child sex trafficking. And all the things that have gone on with there. We're getting names like Alan Cranston is big time into sex trafficking, and so is Edmund G. Brown. Your thoughts on this particular aspect of it, where history is repeating it, because we have people that have been trafficked that are coming forward.
Well, and that's exactly what I wanted to focus on today. And a lot of people think this just as a random thing. And I'm going to explain to people that these networks have gone on for thousands of years, that they're controlled by certain groups of people, and that they're actually intelligence operations. And this is how they've kept control of our government and our CEOs, our judges. And I'm going to focus on who Maxwell and Epstein really are. This is a public event, and there are many people like this that are doing these things all over the world. I'm not just focusing on Epstein and Maxwell, but I'm going to use them as an example because I've been watching their family since the early 1990s when I lived in London or worked in London, and I was there quite a bit. And I found out about Robert Maxwell and who he really was and what he's been doing and all the lies and all the connections, why these people never get in trouble. It's because these people are from generational trafficking, and they use trafficking not only to control the power structures, but to fund their bringing about of the New World Order. So I kind of I wrote a book about Epstein and Maxwell about 7 years ago. And today I did send you a copy. I'm going to read from a chapter of the book I wrote, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There you go.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Well,
yeah, please do.
It's just much more methodical this way, and we can get a lot more information. And my intent isn't to hurt anyone's feelings. Apparently, the Epstein and Maxwell, I believe, were double agents for the CIA, the Mossad, and British intelligence. But I'm going to explain the 5 eyes. And again, as we discussed in the last conversation we had, this isn't an attack on Jewish people. This is the group of followers of Sabbatai Zebi who turned against God. The Bible and the Torah are full of these stories. So these people are from these groups of descendants who were forcibly converted to Judaism in the 7th and 8th century by the Tsar of Russia, and who continued to practice Baal worship or Satan worship, where we see child sacrifice, slavery, and the different things that these groups are practicing right out in the open if a lot of people really want to take the time to look. And the logo of my chapter, or the title of my chapter, is They Blackmail Everyone Who Is Anyone. And so today we're going to uncover the epic saga of the intelligence operatives Epstein and Maxwell and highlight their connections to the people who rule the world and us. So I'm just going to start right here. let us review some of the important details about the saga that is unfolding before the public view today. Are the Epstein-Maxwell arrests really an international scandal prompted by sexual predators taking advantage of poor young women? Are the sexually charged stories and the famous names in Epstein's Black Book really the most interesting aspects of the drama being played out in the media and in our courtrooms? A worldwide scandal in every newspaper and broadcast for the last 10 years. Rich guys sleeping with teenage girls. Epstein and Maxwell had been accused and reported to the FBI and other authorities for the same behavior since the last century. Why now, and why have none of the other people involved in the scandal been arrested to date? The salacious stories about Epstein needing 3 women a day and Ghislaine helping him because they are best buds just does not add up. To understand who these people are and how their activities affected the rest of the world's population, we must go back to the last century. The origin of their power seems to be derived from blackmail, extortion, theft, murder, rape, insurrection, and treason. Ghislaine is a Harvard-educated helicopter and submarine pilot who speaks 4 languages. She was born to privilege, and according to the American mainstream media, she arrived broke and shamed by her father, Robert Maxwell's crimes when she arrived on the New York social scene. Apparently, this did not hold her back from socializing with the who's who of American elite, including Governor Bloomberg. Contrary to media reports, Maxwell and Epstein did not meet in New York City, but years earlier through Maxwell's father. In an interview in July 2020, Ari Ben-Menashi, a former Israeli military intelligence officer who served from 1977 to 1987, who worked directly with Robert Maxwell during his years as a military agency, and he was responsible for the Israel-Iran policy. Some may remember Menashe's testimony in front of Congress about the events of the Iran-Contra controversy, and Menashe was also put on trial in Israel, and he was later acquitted. But what his testimony showed is that Israel was laundering the Iran money and stealing some of it and laundering it into their military operations. Maxwell's sisters are both interesting career paths. Isabel and Christine are twins, and they're credited with being the co-creators of the Magellan Company that is now owned by Excite. And Bill Gates personally invested in the original company. Isabel was the president of Comtech, an Israeli internet company, now Siren, and she's listed as the technology pioneer of the World Economic Forum. The 2 sisters, Isabel and Maxwell, created a software that works on the intelligence databases of the FBI, CIA, and DEA. So we literally have 2 of the daughters of a Mossad spy, Robert Maxwell, working as spies in the U.S. intelligence agencies and providing software to the FBI to help them with espionage. While the younger sister is a massive sex trafficker and recently captured by the FBI and serving time in prison. I sent you a photograph. I don't know if people have ever been aware that she had 2 twin sisters or high-level Mossad agents also. I did send you an email, Paul, that's got different pictures if you want to follow along. Now, Ghislaine's charity, her real-life goal seems to be to save the ocean, and she ran a charity called Terramar out of Epstein's New York apartment, and the foundation was funded with Clinton Foundation money. She also worked with Google developers to create a submarine program that allowed navigation to go undetected by regular boat programs. So this penniless, helpless girl apparently came to New York with nothing, but she was able to help Google design submarine programs. So the whole story just doesn't fit. She refers to the poor women in her depositions as trash who did not matter. That came from a 2015 lawsuit. And the other thing about this Terramar, we've understood how the British Empire especially has gone around capturing countries like Australia, the US, and Canada in the corporate system. Terramar was also a new country. And the members of this country were people like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. Many of us have discussed how the United States Corporation went bankrupt several years ago. It's my opinion that these people were planning. It's got all Prince Andrew, the British royal family, the same people who owned the current bankrupt corporation are now the people reincorporating into this Terramar. So they even had their own line of sheets. And if you understand, I mean, of course, most budding countries need their own line of bedding. But what usually appeared on the bedding advertisements were pictures of babies and small children. And if we look at Ellen DeGeneres, Wayfair, and some of the scandals that have occurred on some of these websites, we understand that the babies are what's for sale, not the bedding or the furniture and that. So after a brief history of some of the key players in this international web of crime, media today would have most believe that the Epstein-Maxwell scandal is a shocking new revelation about a predator class and their propensity for sex with underage children. So why are they ignoring the generational saga that links Epstein and Maxwell to international intelligence agencies, presidents, governors, arms dealers, scientists, Ponzi schemes, war crimes, the British royals, Hollywood, and missing women and children worldwide since the 1970s? To understand who these people are and the entities they represent, we must go back to the last century. So I'm going to talk about Robert Maxwell a little bit, Ghislaine Maxwell's father. He came into the public eye in 1949 when he financed and ran guns for the first Israeli military. He was actually a Nazi, and he and his spouse were supposed to be in prison for life or put to death. Instead, they were extracted on Project, well, the British had a different one. We called it Project Paperclip, but Maxwell was extracted. And I know you and I, Paul, have talked about that in the past. Did you know anything about Maxwell's extraction?
I did not actually until you mentioned it. But I have, as you know, we've extensively studied this whole Maxwell thing going on, and you know, from top to bottom. But I did not know that he was a Nazi. Makes a lot of sense.
Well, you're going to find out some really interesting information as we go along, and after I'm done, you're going to wonder what the heck was going on. And this, to me, this is just an example to explain people don't understand what's going on in our country and how our politicians don't represent us. And that's what I'm trying to explain. They're all controlled via blackmail, extortion, and these the ways that they've infiltrated and collapsed many governments. So he first came into the public eye in 1949 because he was the first person who financed and ran guns for the first Israeli military. The United States and other countries declined to fund Israel's weapons purchases, and the fledgling country relied on Maxwell to raise the money for the first military. I was living in London during this time, and Maxwell's naked body was found floating near his boat, the Lady Ghislaine, in 1991. Maxwell was a household name in Britain as head of a British media empire. The official police statement reported that he committed suicide after bankrupting his newspaper business and stealing his employee pension funds. News reports of the time indicated his empire was built on a pyramid of debt that finally collapsed. To this day, questions remain about where the employee pension fund disappeared to, and if Maxwell was the only one responsible for bankrupting the media company. Not just a media mogul, Ghislaine Maxwell's father was a known intelligence agent, rumored to be a double and triple agent for the Mossad, British intelligence, the CIA, and Russian intelligence. His reputation and access to the world's leaders was well publicized prior to his death. And although Israel denied association with him, they gave him a grand state funeral with at least 6 intelligence heads attending the service. So Robert Maxwell and the Five Eyes. Did you have?
No, I didn't realize he was so important as to have such a crowd around him when he died.
Well, and this is what I'm explaining. The Nazi Party did not lose World War II. They were extracted and distributed all over the world. And this is what we see happening to our countries today. They
Right.
relied heavily on their spy networks. We've gone in back in history a few different times. I explained how these group of cabal people were forcibly converted and continued to secretly practice Baal worship, where child sacrifice, pedophilia, and incest are the glories of their faith.
So let's back up here a second, so for clarity, because the Five Eyes really has been around a lot longer than just simply after World War II and the formation of the CIA and other agencies at that time. They were there in place already, for the most part. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying, yeah, the Five Eyes and the intelligence agencies, since the United States became its own country, the European powers have worked to collapse. A lot of people don't understand that we always hear about Cecil Rhodes and the Rhodes Scholarship.
Right.
Now, that was designed 200 years ago. He left all of his money to bring the British Empire back into power and bring the United States, Canada, and all of India, all of the places that they've lost when people wanted their independence and left the British Empire. So these Five Eyes, the Khazarians themselves, who are a Turkic tribe, were driven out of. They're the people we're fighting in the Ukraine, the Nazis in the Ukraine right now. So historically, these people secretly practiced Judaism, Christianity, or Catholicism, but secretly they were practicing these ancient practices. And they've been around. The spy network is what's kept people in the false matrix that we exist in today, is by blackmail and extortion. This is nothing new, and this is the way the world has been controlled for some time.
When was Cecil Rhodes? When did he die?
I think it was like 150 years ago. And people like Bill Clinton went to the Rhodes. As you're aware, the United States went through its third bankruptcy in 1999, and that's why Bill Clinton was president. Some private citizens stepped in and saved the country. Otherwise, our country was open for capture for a 90-day period, and we would have been captured back into the British system if Bill and Hillary Clinton. And people have to understand that the Clintons were put in power by George Bush Sr., whose father financed the Nazi Party, tried to overthrow the United States government with the Nazi Party, and is responsible via Wall Street and the City of London for the 100 million deaths of communism over the last century.
So, this is really kind of an important concept to understand, that this network has been in existence, and the push of people in America. And I'm going to go back to Cecil Rhodes, because if you talk about 150 years ago, let's say, you're roughly talking about the same time as the California Gold Rush, and also the Civil War in that time frame. Now, it was and this is the connected dot for us, and I think it's a great learning piece for everybody. But we talk all the time about 1861, the Civil War, because of New California, Virginia, West Virginia split, and all that stuff, and Lincoln and all his concerns. And was he the legitimate president? Was he not? What about the Electoral College? That whole discussion that goes on about him. But Lincoln had himself a big problem by 1861, and that big problem was the invasion of Mexico by the British, by the Spanish, by the Italians, by the Portuguese, by people. This was something that people don't talk about. But 1861, at the same time as the Civil War, they opened up a military front in Mexico to take it back. And that lasted until 1866. Now, I think that may have been an attempt to, my personal looking at it right now, at least the data that I have, I think they were trying to come into California to take the gold. That's what I think. That's what I've been speculating. And that would have been the British primarily making that lead.
Well, and do you remember that mining talk I gave at those business conferences? And I pointed out that gold was discovered 100 years earlier on the Mexican-American border.
Right, right. That's
Remember
right.
down, and
Now
that's close. I forget the
that's right.
county now.
That would have
So
been around the Salton Sea area, Blythe, down there in the Colorado River, the Gulf of Baja, in that whole area.
yes. So they were aware there was gold there for a long time, and they had been trading. I think a lot of California history has truly been erased. I grew up in Sonoma County. They've completely removed the fact that the Russians were the first people to settle the west coast of the United States. And unlike the Spanish and the other Europeans, they didn't enslave the local people. They didn't capture the women. So there's a lot of history that's only been sized up
Oh
to
yeah,
fit our history.
and we New California. We because we are New California, we took our namesake after what was called at the time Nuevo or Alta California, and so we took the Nuevo as a historical piece to tie us in historically to the past, and then we discovered the past of Nuevo California, that there was a Declaration of Independence in 1836, and that was like, whoa, what's all this about? And that there was a big flag called the Alvarado flag with the big red star, and that was 1836. And then what about earlier in 1836? Oh, shockingly, Texas declares independence in 1836 as well. And so you start putting those pieces of the puzzle. Now you're bringing out the puzzle about what happened down there along the Colorado and in Mexico, California area, because there was open mining going on there in the 1840s, but there had been before that, well before that, as you're talking about.
Of course, well, in the reality that we have to understand is that there were people here in the United States before Columbus discovered America. The Sumerian tablets, the Egyptian tablets show a history. They called it Americas, land of the plumed serpent. We still have their legends, like in Quetzalcoatl in Mexico. The Mexicans still have that original heritage. If you go to school in Mexico, they actually teach you that Cleopatra did not die. That was her maidservant, that she sailed to Zihuatanejo, Mexico, and married the king of Zihuatanejo. So our history has been dramatically altered to support the Catholic Church and the absolute genocide of all the people that were here before the church arrived. On all the ships of the Spanish armadas, they would send a representative of the church, a Knight Templar. The whole world were Saturday worshipers prior to them changing it to Sunday. So anyone who continued the ancient practices of the ancient world that were known to both South and North America and Australia was murdered immediately on arrival by these groups of people. So that's a whole other story we can go to.
But please go on about the others.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about World War II and the Allied intelligence agencies that have been working together to share information and defense strategies, an alliance referred to as the Five Eyes. And the Five Eyes arrangement is between Britain, Canada, New Zealand, and the USA, and allows foreign intelligence agencies to share data. Unfortunately, the intelligence agencies often circumvent the laws to protect influential and often guilty individuals. For instance, if the CIA wants information about a US citizen, they have British intelligence spy on a person. The CIA is prevented from spying on their own countrymen, so they get around these laws by claiming the information came through a foreign intelligence source. And we all know what happened with the Trump dossier and the British intelligence officer. That's kind of an old story now. The other country's intelligence apparatus uses the same deceptive information gathering techniques to spy on their citizens. As part of the British intelligence, Robert Maxwell, Five Eyes were sharing information with each other. Maxwell would then use this data to give to the Russians and the Mossad. Russia and Israel and Maxwell had quite the business of selling information and disinformation to the world's political and military rivals. And I think some of this may have stopped because Russia does not want to support, because the group that I'm talking about are also the ones who financed the Bolsheviks and murdered anywhere from 25 to 100 million Russians under communism. People are exactly unclear. So the Russians understand who this power force is. You may recall that my entire life, they loved Russia, the liberal left, until Putin came in and wanted Russia, believed in Russian nationalism and didn't want the foreign bankers there. So since that time, Russia's been the enemy of the Mossad and the CIA. So this is where it really gets interesting. And now Maxwell and the Promise software. History tells us that Robert Maxwell's success came from the Promise software designed with technology stolen by Israel from the United States. This computer program provided a backdoor into worldwide intelligence agency systems, giving Israel leverage over most countries' politicians, industry leaders, judges, presidents, military operations, and the ruling class worldwide. According to insiders like Ben Menashe, not just government secrets either. Personal data of politicians, military leaders, CEOs, and anybody else on the planet they chose to spy on. Menashe, a longtime intelligence counterpart of Maxwell, says Maxwell was murdered by the Mossad because he was trying to use information generated from the Promise software platform against Israel. The Mossad had refused to bail out his companies that were in financial troubles. In retrospect, it may not have been a good idea for Maxwell to blackmail the blackmailers. The United States Attorney General was William Barr during the Promise software theft. Yes, the former U.S. Attorney General under Presidents Bush Sr., Bush Jr., and Trump, Barr's Department of Justice investigation went nowhere. No political backlash by the USA for the Israeli software theft from the United States. And just as a reminder, they also stole the nuclear secrets and built their own secret military plant. Again, with no repercussions from any government. Conversely, funding to Israel increased after the theft. The Promise software program was a perfect tool to blackmail and extort people worldwide. And this is a result that we see in our Congress and Senate and politicians today. I believe that they are all under the threat of blackmail. Now, Maxwell's media empire. Where did the money go? Who benefited from Robert Maxwell's death? And where did Epstein's money that to date no one can identify a recognizable source really come from? Was Robert Maxwell really one of the world's wealthiest men, or just another con artist employed by an intelligence agency and disposed of when he became a threat? Like Epstein and now his daughter Ghislaine. Were the British authorities on the verge of arresting Maxwell when he was found dead? Or was he spirited back to Israel to live out his life as a retired Mossad agent to avoid answering for his failed business ventures and massive theft in England? Israel does not allow extradition for crimes committed in other countries by its citizens in most instances. Now, Maxwell's protege was Epstein. Maxwell gave Epstein his start in the intelligence business in Israel in the late 1970s. According to Menashe's interview, Robert Maxwell had been working on Epstein's behalf to find an assignment. Eventually, Maxwell found a project for Epstein, and his job was to compromise Bill Clinton. The Mossad felt he was an unknown, that he may not be controllable as president. Mossad thought that Clinton might do something crazy like President Carter and try to make peace in the Middle East. Menashe was in favor of peace with Palestine, but Israeli leaders would not. Maxwell was involved with the international arms dealer Adnan Khashoggi. And just as a side note, I met Khashoggi once. He just seemed like a regular guy. I think he took the fall. I'm not defending him in any way, of course, but I think he took the fall for many more worldwide figures that were heavily involved in this international arms dealer.
Where did you meet him at?
I was partied one night. He literally had his ankle bracelet on, and we were at a nightclub called Regine's, which was a popular New York nightclub in the 80s and early 90s. and he was just sitting next to us, and so ended up talking to him and his wife and their group of friends, and just like you would if you were out one night. It wasn't a super personal conversation or anything.
Wow, being in the right place at the right time has its well,
and really over my life, I've been in a lot of places and met a lot of interesting people, restaurants, hotel first class lounges, and first class airplane flights. I've met movie stars, politicians, world leaders. So
here you are.
Yeah, and here I am with Paul Preston, of course.
There you go.
Yeah.
Naturally with Paul Preston. Go ahead.
So internationally, Khashoggi was known as the biggest weapons dealer of his time. Maxwell worked with him to launder funds and supply weapons to the Middle East. How could politicians steal the foreign aid and weapons to resell elsewhere if the Palestinian issue was resolved? And this is what we're seeing all over, that we send aid to foreign countries, they sell it to our enemies, and now we're on the border fighting the Mexican cartels with the stuff we sent to the Ukraine and to Afghanistan. How could they topple Iraq, Greater Israel policy in the 1990s? You can go ahead and read it. These people have an open stated plan of the Greater Israel plan, which includes Syria, parts of Egypt, parts of Jordan, and parts of Iraq, actually. They continue to control Iran via the CIA without constant aid and military support from other countries, mainly U.S. taxpayers. And I believe that Iran itself has been controlled by the CIA since the third time they tried to overthrow the government, and that we are currently funding our own deep world state order. They need a boogeyman. And if you look at where a lot of the money is coming from for the Iran nuclear plan, it came via different avenues from the US. And now the Russians are the ones building the nuclear facility. I mean, I don't know how long these people are going to take. My entire adult life, they were on the verge the next day of having nuclear power. So I don't know what to believe on that story.
Yeah, isn't it amazing that we are funding our own demise? And it's taken Doge to come along, and we've known this. We've been talking about the money's coming from us, and especially when you talk about the border invasion and all that stuff, and how that whole thing downstream has been going. But I was just absolutely stunned when I found out the extent by which we are funding it through USAID. It was and everything we're doing right now, we're still finding out how large this corruption is.
Well, and this goes back a really, really long time. This is one of the reasons our country's bankrupt and we have penniless people living on the street and nobody cares, because our politicians are all being blackmailed.
Right.
Many of our politicians have dual citizenship, and they do not represent the United States. They are working towards the New World Order. They're open about it now. This isn't no longer a conspiracy theory. These people openly discuss this stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah. Epstein's skill at befriending sexual deviants to blackmail him finally launched his career. This was the only thing he seemed to be good at, is attracting other deviants. Not only did he compromise.
What a quality.
Yeah. Not only did he compromise Clinton, another big prize in his lap was Prince Andrew. Exploiting his desire for underage women was literally exposed the royals' personal lives and possibly brought down the monarchy. With the White House and the royals compromised, Israel could continue laundering money and giving the funds to Iran, fund their expansion in the Middle East, and continue to receive aid from other countries. I read in one article, this was before the war, this is when I wrote the article a few years ago, but every person in Israel receives an average of $31,000 per person, based on what the U.S. aid alone. So they're getting this.
All that money just for being cute.
Well, and of course, I mean, I'm not debating, and this isn't about the average Israeli person. They themselves have been abused by this system, and their elite, right. They're being used as pawns. Do you think the guys in New York really care what happened to the average person in Israel today? No, they don't. And so this is what people call anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism. The word anti-Semitism was actually created by the Bolsheviks because they were noting that predominantly, and you can go back to speeches made by British leaders after World War I, and talking about this group of people who had forsaken God, the story that we see throughout the Torah. So this is an attack on the average person. They themselves, throughout the Bible, have been turned on by their own fellow people, and genocided, all kinds of things. Who do you think financed the Germans? The City of London bankers and the New York bankers. So these are all predominantly people from those same heritage groups that have turned on their own people. So this by no means is an attack on the general Israeli, and I'm praying for those people that are there, those innocent lives that are being murdered so these people can fund their new world order, because this is really what it's about. And them recapturing land these Canaanites lost 3,000 years ago. It's completely insane. I am not a Zionist, and my family was Irish. I'm not trying to go back to Ireland and claim all the land that my ancestors lost 400 years ago. It doesn't make any sense.
It's not worldly. It's not worldly.
Okay, so
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so between the promised software information and the sexually compromised world leaders, Israeli intelligence has blackmailed people at the highest levels of technology, media, education, and sciences. And when I'm talking about Israel, I'm talking about the CIA agents, the Mossad agents, British intelligence, the Russian Bolsheviks that are still active in Russia, trying to create a war with Russia because they, again, want to Russia is one of the last Christian nations in the world, and these people are Satanists. And whether you believe Putin or not, he considers himself a devout Christian. So
that's the thing that I don't think a lot of people, have gotten the grip on yet. And I think we need to push it as hard as possible. He is a Christian, and he represents a Christian nation. With all the foibles that go along with being in the former Soviet Union, having fought Second World War, how do you reestablish a religion, a strong religion after that? They were completely decimated with the communists. And Putin, of course, is not a communist.
Well, and you have to understand that part of the rift between Russia, and this is what a lot of people, they've never reported on this, but the Nazis were going in and killing the Russian Orthodox priests, and they were destroying their thing. They murdered 14,000 people in the Donbass. And as we can see, as I've explained in many shows, these are power structures between the ancient Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire is the Catholic Church. And so part of what was happening during this time is Zelensky went away from the Russian Orthodox Church, killing, imprisoning, and burning down churches. And he went with the Roman Empire, which is the Western Roman Empire.
Right.
And the people in Ukraine that we're having trouble with and that want the war there, they've been trying to invade Russia for 1,000 years. All these people that, and I think on one of the very first shows that I ever did with you, I explained how I believe that they were using this time now. They planned on having World War III with Russia for a long time. So they've just spent the last 4 years killing everybody of military age in the Ukraine, which previously would have fought for Russia. And so they've used our money to kill all the young people and anyone who would rebel, so they can march directly into Russia and take it over like their ancestors have planned, and the people in the Third Reich, because they're trying to bring about the Fourth Reich.
There's that's amazing, that the Fourth Reich. Well, see, this Fourth Reich, according to Peter Levenda and others, was, and this is where this fits in, the Levenda books and Operation Paperclip and all that. And now, what's the operation called that that hooked these guys up. What was it? A British operation comparable to Operation Paperclip. What was that
Oh,
called?
well, the Russians called it kielbasa because the Russians took some too, like a big sausage. I forget what the British called their. I can look
Yeah.
that up. I forget what they call it now.
Okay. So anyway, that would be nice if we could have that one. But
Okay.
the 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 relationship between all these agencies, the Promise software, which that's another big area of exploration because there's so much that it has to offer there. Which it's called the system. The octopus, I think, is what some people say, is the octopus. I
Yes.
think
Yes, that's
that's the same
exactly.
thing, right? And we first came across the octopus in Southern California in Riverside County, but that's another part of the story. We're gonna have to run for time here pretty soon. We've got about 2 more minutes,
Oh,
so
okay. Well, I
close it
have
up with 2
so much
minutes.
more
I
on
know, I
this, and I
know.
mean, it really hooks Deutsche Bank, Wall Street, the Promise software. I mean, there's so much that we don't
Well,
understand.
why don't we? This is my proposition to you. Why don't we come back tomorrow again
Okay.
in it's 7 o'clock hour? Because I think
Okay. Well, that.
we have a. What do you think? Oh,
Okay. I think that's probably a good idea.
see, you're sitting here. My feet are going to be really cold. Wear lots of socks.
I will. And I forgot my little blanket today because I didn't think it was going to be cold. So I'll be prepared tomorrow. Visit me on the Lost in Translation show. Let's all pray for the innocent people all over the world who are being preyed on by this group of Satanists.
That's really hit it right there. We're all being preyed upon by these folks, and Donald Trump is stepping up and saying no more. And I think we collectively, as a society, looking at this generationally. I was up pretty late last night reading, and I kept on thinking to myself, without these global elites pushing this agenda, what a world it would be. And they're into everything and as satanic as it possibly can get. And you mentioned that again this morning, and I thought, how deviant, or how normal would the world be without this deviance?
Well, and these people have been around for a long time. I can, in the family, when it was named Sassoon way back when, I can even go into the Sassoon family and how they came to rise power because they were in the heroin trade, but originally they were trafficking children in ancient Persia and Iraq.
Right.
So these people go way back. They're generational, and people who decide to call us conspiracy theorists are really condoning what these people are doing because there's too much evidence to see what's really going on.
And those that are yeah, exactly. Those people are just, making fun of us and turning their backs on us and all that. We'll be down again on Monday down in Sacramento, and we're going to make some cries for the help for the kids. We have our own proclamations that we have to say is sort of our process that we go through. But you're welcome to show up down there. That'd be wonderful if we could get you to kind of say a few words
all right.
to everybody
I'll
as
look
well.
forward
So
to that.
okay, well then
Okay,
you're
Paul,
good.
we'll have a great day. And I just want to thank people for letting me share the structures that control our lives. That's the goal of
And you'll
my
be
channel.
back tomorrow, by the way.
All
We're
right.
going to hold that spot tomorrow. So we're going to continue this conversation tomorrow. So Simone Anderson, thank you very much. Lost in Translation show on Rumble. Anyway, so we'll be right back. We'll be right back tomorrow. What am I talking about? We're going to be right back tomorrow. And of course, I want to thank everybody for being with us here today and all the great things that you guys have been doing for us in the New California State Movement in particular, because things are moving and they are moving in our direction in a very good way. Like I said, if you want to come down and see us all, we're going to be down there at the Capitol about 2:30 on Monday, 2:30 on Monday on the west side. And we have a proclamation that we have to read. It's not going to be as sophisticated as the other ones and long and drawn out. We went 2 hours one time. It should not be that long, but it's an important announcement about New California. So it's going to be on the steps of the state capital of California. Thanks for listening to Agenda 21 Radio. Remember to visit our website, 821r.com. And of course, New California State, please donate. Please donate. We've got a lot of things to go. Simone, as you just saw, is one of our delegate representatives. We're going back to Washington, and there's a process to do that. And I'll actually be down there myself in Washington, as well as Chris Street and several other people. It's a big delegation that has to go back. and we're pretty excited about the statehood process. So thanks for listening to Agenda 21 Radio. And remember, stay strong, America. We are exceptional Americans.
We're sending out an SOS to the last vestiges of freedom, democracy, and the American way of life. Paul Preston with Agenda 21.
This is AENN, American Exceptionalism News Network.